Hello everyone, welcome to the Angular tutorial on how to fetch and display data from the API. Here we will develop a small application that does just that, fetches and displays the data. This tutorial is for beginner Angular developers and we will use a small set of data. I found this dog API that we can use to fetch fun facts about dogs. Here is the application, how it will look. What we are essentially doing, we are taking this set of data and just displaying it. And that is it. Let's see how to make it work. First, let's make sure that Angular CLI is installed. We can do it using any command line. I will be using Visual Studio Code. So here we can just type npm install. G stands for global. It means Angular CLI will be available throughout all applications. And we can do add Angular CLI. And since I'm on Mac, I need to add sudo. If you're on Windows, you don't need to do that. So let me type my password. And yeah, we made sure Angular CLI is installed. The next step will be to create an application. I created for myself on my desktop doc facts tutorial. You can do the same, navigate to this folder, and to create a new application, we can just type ng new standalone. It's a new feature available in Angular for creating standalone components. I do have a short video on my channel on the benefits of using standalone components comparing to the ng module that we used in previous Angular versions. For new application, always try to use standalone as much as possible. And we can just name our application dog facts. And it will be creating for the styles, let's pick Sass. It doesn't matter for our project, but I usually tend to go with Sass, and we don't need, say, server-side rendering, so we can just type n, which means no in here. And it is creating. It might take a while, so please be patient with it. And let's get back once it's installed. Okay, our application was created successfully. We could see 2 messages here. This means it's good. If you run into any issues during this process or further in the tutorial, just feel free to drop a comment and I will be happy to help you out. And let's see if our application is running okay. To do that, we can just navigate cd dog facts. And do npm start to start our application. It will be starting on the default port 4200. We can change this port in configuration, but it is general practice to leave Angular applications on 4200. So here we have hello dog facts. Our application is running successfully. Now let's go and edit some code. So we can go to the dog facts folder. Let's see what we have here. We are primarily interested in the source folder, app folder. We have our default code here. First, what we can do, this is the whole default page generated. We don't need any of this, so we can just do Control A and delete everything. The next step for us will be creating a dog facts component, which will be responsible for displaying fun facts about dogs that we will pull from the API. So to do that, what I usually do is just click on this plus sign and open a new terminal window, where in this terminal window I will run the application and see if we have any errors or any issues. And the other terminal window I will use for running CLI commands like creating components, services, cards, or any other CLI commands. So in here, what we can do first, we need to navigate to the dog facts folder, and then we run a command to generate a new component. It will look like this: ng generate component. It will be a standalone component, and we will call it dog facts. Okay. And And our component was created. Here we have it. It consists of 4 files. So just a quick rundown of files. And HTML, self-explanatory. We will write our HTML here and do data binding. Sass for all our styles related to that component. Spec.ts is for testing. Not every project is using a unit test, but it is a good practice to write unit tests, particularly for business logic. And the TS file where we define the behavior of the component, we get data from services. Now, the next step for us will be to actually use this component in our app component. And essentially what we are looking to see our docfactsworks sentence here. So let's do that. So what we need to do here is take this selector and place it right on that page. This is how we are using one component in another component. And of course, from here, we need to import our docfacts component. So we just copy it and add it to our imports. And for this, we need to add import our component from, and it is in /docfacts component. We save all the files. This is a handy button to save all the files in Visual Studio Code. And from here, we should see docfactsworks on our page. Next, let's create a service that fetches the data from the API and gets it to our application. To do that, we can create a new folder, call it services. And in services folder, create a new file called docfact.service.ts. It is a general practice in Angular application to group services in services folder, and depending on the data that this service will be responsible for fetching or pushing, we are calling with the respective name. In our case, it will be docfact. So let's implement the service. So first here we need to import injectable. So injectable is a decorator that specifies that Angular can use this class in dependency injection. So let's use it. And then we can write add in injectable, and here we need to specify provided in root. And what that means is that this service will be available throughout the application. There is another way to provide specific service in a specific component or specific module, but for our purposes and mostly for the majority of application, it is a general practice to just make services available throughout the application. And here we can export class docfact service. So this is how you define a service. Now our next step would be to import HTTP client and configure it. So HTTP client is a class available in Angular framework that helps us to perform HTTP requests. So in our case, it will help us to get the data from the API. Let's do it. So let's use our constructor and let's inject HTTP client. And our HTTP client is imported from Angular common HTTP. Please add that as well. And brackets. Now we need to make one more configuration for HTTP client to work, and that is we go to our app config, and here we add import providers from, and we add HTTP client module. We need to import this module. It is also coming from common HTTP to make our HTTP request work. And here we are ready to write the code that actually fetches the data. Let's do that. First, we need to define the API URL that we will be using. Let's do that. So we can write private API URL, and let's copy the URL. So what we are doing, we are copying this URL and assigning to our private variable. Now next, we can actually add here API as well. And we are coming to our next step, which will be to write a method that actually fetches the data from the API. Or we can call it getFacts. So let's do that. GetFacts. It's just a simple method. In here, we will use our HTTP client. It has different methods available. We are interested in get to fetch the data, and it accepts the URL. So let's go back and examine our URL. So in here we do have, so this is what we are saving in our API URL, and this part is what we need to add. The reason I did it in separate ways is just in general, we would want to save this API URL in our configuration, so we can set different URLs in different environments, as well as we can have many methods here that will be using the same API. So let's configure our URL. To do that, we can just do a string interpolation and add API URL with this API URL, and we need to add a missing portion, which is facts, and the number 5, which means the 5 facts that we will be pulling in, which we can add right here, and we need to return this data. And this is a method that fetches data from the backend. Let's pull it in our component and display the data first in console to see how it looks. Now let's navigate to our docfacts folder, to our TypeScript file. So first thing that we need to do here, we need to import our service, docfacts service. Let's do that. We can just, so once you see here a menu, you can click tab and it will autofill the import for you. Just a handy suggestion. Next, we can define a constructor, and using dependency injection, have our service available in this component. Next, using a dependency injection, we can import our service into this component. So we can define private. We can just call it service, since we won't be having any other services in this component, and it will be of type docfacts service. Okay, so this is done. Now, how do we pull data into this component using service? A standard practice is to use ng-on-init hook. This hook fires once the component is initialized, and it is a good place to go and fetch the data. I will have a separate video on Angular lifecycle hooks available on my channel soon, so please check it out. So to do that, we do implements on init. We click on it, and we have on init available in here, and let's implement it. ng on init. Now in here, we can actually use the service, fetch the data, and display it in the console. Here we can type this .service .getFacts is the method that we are creating. So here we need to execute it, and it returns observable. So for our purposes, we are interested only in the subscribe method, and I will have a separate tutorial on observables later. So we can use the subscribe method to receive data from the service, and it accepts actually an arrow function where the first parameter is the data we're getting from the service. So we can call it facts, and using arrow function, here we can just console log facts. So this is how we are getting our data. Now let's see it in the console. Our application is running, let's remember that. On our side, we right-click, go to Inspect, and navigate to Console. In the console, we have our object. This is our data that we are logging in docfacts component. We even can click on it to make sure that this is this console log. So we're directed to the console log facts. Now let's inspect the data. In here, we have two properties, facts and success. Perfect. This is our data coming from the API. And now let's make some improvements to how we are pulling the data. So first thing that we need to do is, since we are using Angular and TypeScript, we can define types. So we see what data we have coming from the backend. We have an object with two properties, facts, which is an array of strings. We have 5 strings here in our case, and another property, success, which is of type Boolean and true in our case. So let's define this type. We can go back to our application and create a new folder called models, and we can create a new file and call it docfact.ts. And here we can define our data structure. So we do it like this: export interface, and we can call it docfact response. So here we can have facts, which is of type string and array of strings, and success, which is of type Boolean. So this is our data type. Now let's actually use it. We copy the name, and HTTP client has a feature where we can, in the brackets, define the type that we are expecting. So let's just expect this type, and we need to import it. Of course, import docfact response. And also in here we can define return type. We know that our HTTP client returns observable, and we also import it from RxJS. And in the brackets we can say that we are expecting docfact response. And now let's think. Essentially we are getting the data, facts and success, two properties, and technically we don't need success, we're not displaying it, we need only facts. So let's return only facts in our component. To do that, we need to navigate to our docfacts component. Now in our component, let's rename this variable to response, and it will be of type docfact response. And in here, let's define a variable that we will be using to store our array of strings. We can call it simply facts, and it will be string array, and so let's initialize it to empty array. And in here, what we can do, instead of console log, we can just do this dot facts equals response. And here is our facts, our array and success. This actually is coming from the definition of our docfact.ts. It is very helpful when you have many different properties, many different classes, and it just makes your life so much easier when you don't have to type every single property or copy and paste. So what we're interested here is in facts. And let's save everything. Our next step would be to display the facts on the page. One thing that I need to mention is that since we are using observables and we are subscribing, we also need to unsubscribe. This will be part of my observables video. There are multiple unsubscribe strategies available in Angular. Here I will just show you one of them. We need to import take until destroyed. And it is coming from @Angular core RxInterop package. And to use it, what we need to do is first we need to inject destroy ref. To do that is we are just using inject, a new feature available in Angular, and we are injecting destroy ref. And in here, let's import it from Angular core. Okay, so we have this. Now, before subscribing, we can pipe, and in here, we can just use take until destroyed. and we need to pass this destroy_ref inside. So this is just one strategy available to unsubscribe from observables in Angular. There are the standard ways how to do it, and I will film a separate video on that. Now let's save that and go to our HTML to actually display the data. Here, let's make a heading, H1, we can add facts, and let's do a for loop and display our facts. So we can do UL, and in here we can add list item, and for each we can just define ng4 and let fact of facts. I see that ng4 is highlighted. It means that we need to go to our component and actually import it. So here we can just do ng4. And the facts variable is the one that we defined here. So it is array of strings, and what we can do here is do a data binding and just say display fact. We can see here that we don't have any errors, and when we navigate to application, we can even refresh it. Here are our 5 dog facts. Let's do one thing. Let's go back to the application and let's say come and fetch me 10 facts about dogs. We can save it, and here we have it, 10 facts about dogs. So this is how you fetch data from the API.